Thank you. Many medical experts are looking at past pandemics to figure out how to get through this one. I sat down with an expert from the Salk Institute to get his perspective. Do we have a better understanding of these viruses given what we learned back in the 20s, that we can handle these better, or are we just going to see a repeat of what we've seen in the past?
Well, we certainly know a lot more about viruses. We certainly know a lot more about the molecular biology of the viruses. Like in this particular virus, we basically know everything about it. We've sequenced its genome. We sequenced multiple isolates, so we know a lot about how the virus is evolving over time. We've sequenced from China. We've sequenced it from Washington. We've sequenced from California. We've sequenced from... We know the structure of all the proteins, so we know all of that. So no, we're much further ahead of that. But in terms of the public response, there are some similarities. I mean, the polio epidemics of the late 40s and 50s, the very worst one we had was in 1952. People were freaked out about polio back then. And public swimming pools in towns all across North America in the summertime were closed. Nobody went to them. So this thing about, people knew it was an infectious virus. They knew what they were dealing with. And so, there was this thing about avoiding large crowds. But in terms of where we are in terms of the molecular biology of the virus, we're much, much faster. So in terms of making up trial vaccines, as soon as that genome of that virus was sequenced, there were companies, one of them here in San Diego, who right away had a platform, basically, to try to make a prototype vaccine against that virus. So we can move much faster than we could back then. The vaccine attempts, for example, against polio, those took a decade to work. The fastest historical vaccine that we have in sort of historical perspective is the mumps vaccine, which took us almost 4 years to make. So when I say 2 years, that would be faster than any vaccine that we've made so far. So we're in a better shape than we were back then.
We're in better shape than we were back then, but we still have some time to go.
We still have some time to go. The virus is still out there. It's much more widespread in the population than we know about from the case numbers, right? Because we haven't been testing very many people. Hardly anybody's been testing, right? You have to be sort of at death's door to get a coronavirus test. So the data that came out last week, for example, that there have been 2 surveys of folks, one in Santa Clara County, one in Los Angeles County, where people just come in and volunteer and they give blood and they assay to see whether they have antibodies to the virus in their blood, which means they've been exposed to the virus. And the number of those people who test positive for those antibodies is somewhere between 20 and 50 times the caseload in those counties. I wouldn't be surprised if the level of infection in the population is 100 times the caseload, right? Because we haven't been testing nearly widely enough. This is one of the big problems we face right now, is we're flying blind in terms of knowing. People are talking about, we got to reopen the economy, we got to reopen restaurants, we got to get businesses back going. We're sort of flying blind when we propose to do this. We don't have the data.